Hello YouTube. This is the third video I'm doing on knife basics for people who are getting into them. And this one is going to cover the nomenclature of both fixed and folding knife blades. And I'm sure most people are aware that knives are comprised of two major components, which would be the blade and the handle. What they may not be aware of though is what different areas of each of those individual parts are actually called. And so this video is going to cover the parts of the blade, and the next one will cover the parts of the handle. And I'm starting with the very basics here, so you knife experts bear with me for a minute. The first part is the spine, which is the thickest part at the top of the blade. The second part is the grind, which has been discussed in a previous video, which gets you down to the third part, which is the edge. And the spine and the edge come together at the far end of the blade to give you the fourth part, which is the tip. And I'm pretty sure that almost everybody is familiar with those basic parts. Now, at the near end of the blade is the fifth part, which is the ricasso. And the ricasso is the unsharpened part of the blade before it goes into the handle. And unlike the rest of the blade, it has no grind to it. So the ricasso is the same thickness from the spine all the way down to the bottom, as you can see on the K-bar. Now, if the junction of the edge and the ricasso has a recess in it, like on this Air Force survival knife, that is called a choil. And choils are a little controversial. No big deal really, but some people consider them to be a waste of potential edge space and basically useless, especially if they're small, like on this AK-47. Other people are of opinion that choils can be very useful, especially if they're large enough or designed, like on this Geigen Guardian, to accommodate a finger ahead of the handle, which allows you to choke up on the knife for more control during finer cutting tasks. Okay. This GI Tanto has a very large choil in it, which would accommodate any size forefinger, and you can see that dramatically reduces the working length of the knife for more delicate cutting. And the truth is that even small choils can be somewhat useful, especially when sharpening. For example, if you were going to be sharpening this K-bar on a stone, you can see that when you get to the near end of the cutting edge, that you could have some interference from the ricasso because it could scrape on that stone, as opposed to a knife with a choil, which will allow you to sharpen all the way down to the near end of the edge without any interference from a ricasso at all. Now, I don't really care whether they're useful or not. To me, choils can actually enhance the aesthetics of a knife, so I'm perfectly fine with them being on there. And I would leave the debate up to whether they're useful or not to others. Okay. Some knives have a false edge on the back of them, like on this bird flight, and that's sometimes called a swedge. And the false edge may either be sharpened, like on the K-bar, or unsharpened, like on the Geigen. But if a false edge is sharpened, it's almost always done on a fixed blade knife. Folders don't have sharpened false edges on them because they're designed to be carried in a pocket, and you wouldn't want any exposed cutting edge when the knife is closed for obvious safety reasons. Some blades have a groove on the side of them, which is called a fuller, and that's also sometimes called a blood groove because it's been proposed that it allows blood to flow through it, and when you stab an enemy, that would cause him to bleed out. Other people are of the opinion that it's just a way to reduce the weight on a heavier knife blade, and that they're just cosmetic on smaller knife blades. Like choils, again, I don't really care what they were designed for. I think fullers many cases actually enhance the appearance of a knife, so I happen to like them. And the next part found on some knives is the serration. And serrations are like tiny little saw teeth, as you can see on this Kershaw amphibian. And serrated knives are very good for cutting through tough material, and they tend to stay sharper longer than plain edges. The flip side of that is that once serrations go dull, they're usually a pain to resharpen. But for people who do a lot of cutting of heavy material like thick rope or cardboard on a regular basis, a lot of them actually prefer a serrated knife. Now that pretty much covers all the areas of a blade as far as fixed blades go, and folding blades actually have some parts which are unique to them, and most of them have to do with opening the knife, and the first of those is the nail nick, as you can see on this Buck 301. And the nail nick, as the name implies, is just a little groove in the blade which allows you to get a fingernail in there and pry the blade out of the handle. The next is the thumb stud. Thumb studs live on the side of the blade and they protrude through the handle when the knife is closed. And thumb studs allow for very quick deployment of the blade once the knife is already in hand. Some knives use a hole in the blade instead of a thumb stud. That's sometimes called a spider hole because it was developed and is widely used on the knives of the Spyderco Knife Company and their bird knife line. And like thumb studs, a spider hole allows for very quick deployment of the blade once it's already in hand. Now other knives use a variety of snagging gimmicks to deploy the blade once it's being drawn from the pocket. And that's how this would work. As the blade comes out, the snagger opens it, which allows for very quick deployment. Now that's sometimes called waving a knife open, because the very first snagger was the Emerson Wave, which was designed by Ernest Emerson, who created the Emerson Knife Company. And basically it was just a wave-shaped hook on the spine of the knife which snagged the pocket and opened the blade. Other snaggers include quillions, like on the M-Tech folding stiletto, which is just a little spur on the tang. And quillions can also be used as a flipper if it protrudes through the handle when the knife is closed. Some knives use thumb plates, which are attached to the spine, and like a thumb stud, a thumb plate also allows for fast deployment of the blade once the knife is already in hand. Now I'm sure we're going to see more and more development of all kinds of snagging devices because of the hot and heavy competition in the tactical folder market, and every knife company's out there trying to build a better mousetrap and get their name on the newest, latest, greatest, coolest snagging gimmick. Okay, on folding knives, the tang is also considered to be part of the blade, and it's the part that attaches the blade to the handle. The tang has a hole in it which allows a pivot pin to go through, securing the two parts of the knife. And unlike fixed blade knives, the tang on a folder has to be very short because it is completely contained within the handle when the knife is closed. So that pretty much covers the parts of blades, and the next video is going to cover the parts of the handles, like I said. And I hope that there was some good information in this video for you, and as always, thanks for watching.